Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, Michael Rearden.
Welcome, David Waldy, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Michael. Thanks for having me today, my man.
Of course. Today, we're going to be talking about your work. And I always love for the guests to kind of come in and give their own intro, because I have found, like, if I read off a bio sheet, it's nice. Like, I could put that in the description box and people can read it. But when you truly want to get to know someone, you ask the person, like, hey, tell me about yourself. Because when someone reads my bio, they're like, okay, great. We can see his accomplishments. We can see what he has done. But that doesn't necessarily tell us who the person is behind the microphone, behind the screen. And so if you could, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help?
Absolutely. So, Michael, I'm known as the Fierce Empathy Coach. And so I have been in the coaching space for most of my life professionally, really the last 7 years. And I absolutely love helping people get out of their own way. And a lot of what I do involves asking very challenging questions, uncomfortable questions, but in a way that people feel safe. And so what I've had people tell me over the years is that I'm able to create an environment where people feel free to take off the masks and to be vulnerable and transparent and to really dive in deep to what's going on. And I do that in a few different contexts professionally. I do that a lot with men in particular, entrepreneurial men that are visionaries, leaders, and want to be better husbands, better fathers. And then I also I do a lot of business coaching, business consulting. And so working with a variety of different businesses, tons of different industries. I actually have 4 businesses myself, so very busy. The most important thing I want people to know about me is that I absolutely adore my family. I've got 4 beautiful kids. I've been married for coming on 11 years to my incredible wife, and we share life together. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, and they are a heart and soul. And I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to not only do what I love to do in serving and empowering, inspiring people, but being able to be present for my family. And so it's a lot of fun. I've done some really cool stuff with some cool people over the years, and I'm excited to dive into it today.
Perfect. One of the first questions I want to lead off with, because you are a successful man, you are a businessman, busy man also. How do you prioritize your business life, your working life, and your family life? Because, 11 years married, 4 kids, that's a huge time sink. I know there's parents who would love to get a babysitter and to pass it off to them. And all right, you got to go stay at grandma's house for a little bit because I got a lot of work to do. But it seems like you're so involved and you're present in your family's life. And I'm sure many people are wondering, what's the secret?
This is a great question. So when it comes to prioritization, Michael, I usually tell people the first thing is you've got to establish your values. We live in a culture and a system where most people tend to adopt the values of other people because they assume that that's what's going to make them happy. They assume it's going to make them fulfilled or it's going to bring purpose and meaning into their life. And especially here in Western culture, a lot of the value systems that we've created are centralized around money and wealth. And I'm all from people making lots of money. I want everyone to be extraordinarily wealthy. But what I find is that most people sacrifice what matters most because they think that that's a requirement or a prerequisite to be able to achieve the things that they want to achieve. And I can't tell you how many conversations I have, Michael, with people that they've achieved everything that they set out to achieve. That was my story as well. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I had the glass corner office, the company car, the 6-figure salary. I was married, had a kid, everything that everyone said I was supposed to have or achieve to make me happy. I had achieved, and I found myself standing in front of the mirror with a Glock in my hand ready to end my life. And it was a process of rediscovering myself, reclaiming my family, realigning with my values. And so a big part of why I do what I do today is I have so many people come to me and they're like, David, I hit the 8-figure business. I'm making $1 million a year. I've got the car, I've got the house, I'm taking the vacations, but I'm unfulfilled. I feel like I'm lacking purpose. Things are frustrating at home. I can't seem to connect with my wife. I can't seem to be present for my kids. I can't turn it off. There's just this constant chaos in my head and my heart, and I just cannot figure out why I don't have some semblance of peace. And so what I tell people, Michael, is that it all starts with values. If you're not clear on what is important to you and what you value and what you want to prioritize, you will constantly chase what culture says you're supposed to chase in order to be happy. And it leads to a lot of pain, a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration for people because they haven't actually taken the time to define, number one, what they want, number two, why they want it, and number three, who they need to become to get it. And so those three things are instrumental in being able to cultivate. It's not manufacturing. This is a cultivation, natural process of planting seeds, tilling the garden, taking care of what you need to take care of so that you can allow those things to grow in your life and you can actually reap a harvest from your efforts by becoming the person that you want to become.
We live in a society where many people, they struggle with these aspects. They are looking for meaning, purpose, passions in life, fulfillment, joy, happiness. And it's interesting because it's not just one person. It's not just 1% or 5%. It's an overwhelmingly amount of people who are struggling with this concept and this idea and this way of life. Why and how are so many people falling into this trap of society telling them what they need and how they need to live life versus looking at their values and then going after them?
That's a great question. I was in Cuba 3 weeks ago, and I went on a trip to help a local community there. They were building a church. What's interesting about the Cuban people are they're just a beautiful culture, just so kind, so generous, so understanding. But the average Cuban right now, they live on less than $5 USD per month, and that's their world. And so we come from a culture, especially in this coaching space, Michael, that's all about, future orientation, dreams, goals, aspirations, habits, perspective, and all these things. And when I was there, it was the reason I love these trips is that it re-anchors me into so much of what really creates fulfillment and joy and purpose and meaning in our lives. And ultimately, it comes down to connection. And as much as we live in a connected society, as much as we have access to just about anything and everything that you could possibly want, we've never been more disconnected in our lives. And especially with just this constant push for individualization of trying to find your own thing and be your own person and to make your own way and self-made this and self-made that, I think that we have lost so much of what for thousands of years people understood is that to cultivate a beautiful life has to do with living life with other people and building something and doing something together. And that's what I saw in Cuba is that these people who are a level of poverty that most Americans could not understand, they were just filled with laughter and joy and peace just about the fact that they were there with people that they loved and they were working together and doing things together. Many of them didn't know where their next meal was coming from. Many of them don't even have access to clean water. And so, again, the reason I love those type of opportunities is that we live in a culture where we have so much opportunity. And so I have empathy towards those that complain and who are frustrated and are beat down by a system. But at the same time, I've come to a place over the years, Michael, where although I have empathy and understanding towards it, I really have a hard time in having conversations with those type of people because we fail to see that there is no limit to the opportunity that we have access to, particularly here in the United States. And most people are so stuck in their own way that they don't realize that there is so much abundance in the world that we live in. And I think the reason people get confused or jaded is because many of us were programmed and bought into a system and a society. You're supposed to go to school, to get good grades, to graduate, to get into college and get good grades and get a good degree and get a good job, and you'll be happy. And I think that there's a huge segment, especially of our generation, Michael, that have realized like whether people were intentional in doing this or not, we were lied to. Like that's not the path. That's not the path for everyone. Now, I'm all for if you're going to go become a doctor or a lawyer, like please go to school. I don't want your degree from the School of Hard Knocks, but I think we're going through an educational revolution. I think we're going through an entrepreneurial revolution. We're going through a major transition of wealth just based on the age of the average business owner in America today. And so the opportunity is out there, but the perspective is this. The perspective is recognizing that while you're going out and building these great things and wanting to accomplish things and wanting to make money or have different opportunities, you need to answer that question, why? Because if you think it's going to bring something into your life that you don't currently have right now, the majority of the time you're mistaken. You're not going to be more peaceful or have more joy or have more fulfillment because you have more stuff. That is going to come through an internal process of learning to love yourself, learning to embrace your flaws, learning to be human, and learning to do life with people that inspire you, encourage you, and build you up instead of pull you down and complain and whine about all the injustices in the world. And there's a famous quote, if you look for it, you'll find it. If you look for the bad, you're going to find it. If you look for injustice, you're going to find it. If you look for problems, you're going to find them. But if you look for things that are optimistic and hopeful and opportunity and connections and networking, you're going to find it. There's good and bad in all of it. It just depends on what we're focused on.
I start to think when we have individuals who are looking for change in their life, it's not when everything is going good in their life, typically. Typically, it's because of a trauma. Something bad has happened. They're at a point in their life where they're like, I'm not sure if I want to keep on going. I'm not sure what to do next, whatever it be, right?
Yeah.
Where this conversation is definitely an eye-opening one for individuals to say, hey, let me take some action, right? Let me give some intention to my life right now and to where I'm going. But someone's going to wait. People are still going to wait because they have the luxury to wait, right? They have the opportunity to wait. It's not that bad yet, right? The lights are still on, right? They have, some pickles in the fridge or something still. So they're not going hungry quite yet, but it's soon, right? So it's at the cusp of, when does a person take action? Do they take action when their empire and their house and their life is falling apart into pieces? Or is it something that we can bring awareness to, saying, hey, let's do a check-in to see if everything is in alignment to where we want to be later on?
Yeah, I love how you describe that, because you used a word there that is so pivotal, and it's alignment. And the problem is that we live in a society that is consistently aligning with what feels good. And we're so surrounded by comfort and ease and access. And especially in this dopamine crazed world we live in with social media and access to anything we want at any point in time, we've lost an understanding of the power of delayed gratification. I'll give you an example. This morning, every Thursday morning for the past 5 years, I've had coffee with my wife's grandfather. He lives near here. His name's Papa Danny, and he's 86 years old. Every Thursday morning, I meet him at 7 o'clock at his house. We sit on the couch, and he gives me beautiful perspective on life. What's beautiful about his story, he's one of the only people in history that was on an aircraft carrier where the aircraft carrier turned back and came into port because of injuries that were sustained. He was run over by an airplane on an aircraft carrier, and almost every single bone was broken in his body. They had to bring him back. He spent a year in Hawaii when he was 17 years old, in a full body cast. Incredible story, incredible life, but he always gives me perspective. And he told me this morning, he said, you want to know something that I was thinking about the other day? And I said, what were you thinking about, Papa? And he said, it's been a long time since I was hungry. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, I miss the feeling of being hungry. I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you miss the feeling of being hungry? He said, everything tastes better when you're hungry. If you've ever gone without food, if you've ever fasted, or you've ever been in the unfortunate position where you really are like you don't have access to food, we all know like things taste different. I did a 21-day fast at one point in time, and I remember my first bite of food after that, I was like, I've never tasted this before. Chicken is like, what? These are the flavors? Are you kidding me? Right? And what I took from that, Michael, is what you're talking about, is that alignment is a beautiful word, but most people are simply aligning with this instant gratification. What can I do now? How can I feel good? Instead of creating an environment for themselves where they're hungry, so that they can actually truly appreciate the little things, whether it's a little or a lot, having real gratitude for the fact that we woke up today. We didn't earn it. We didn't deserve it. And there is nothing that we could do that would make it happen tomorrow. we're just blessed. We woke up another day when 100,000+ people around the world did not wake up. And we don't see that because of the context. But you're talking about billions and billions of people. And when you shift your perspective and you start saying, okay, instead of aligning with my feelings, I want to align with who I want to become. Your entire perspective on life changes. Now, delayed gratification and action and motivation are much more natural because you have created a vision in your mind of the person you want to be, not the things you want to have, but the person you want to be. And what's beautiful about that is that I believe that our external world oftentimes is a reflection of our internal world. And so when you can start to master the internal world and align yourself with your values and align yourself with the husband or the wife you want to be, the mother, the father you want to be, the entrepreneur or the small business leader or the side hustler that you want to be, when you start to craft a vision and a version of that person, now all you have to do is say, well, would that version of me do what I'm doing right now? And if the answer is no, you no longer have permission to do it. It's a very easy, your life becomes really simple. Would that version of me snooze every morning? No, they wouldn't. Would that version of me go to the gym? Yeah, they would. Would that version of me start saving money and investing and developing my financial literacy? Would that version of me take a risk on starting a business? And when you can start to create that vision and version of yourself and you give yourself permission to define it, now you can align your actions, your behaviors, your beliefs, and your thoughts with that version of you. And you do that with consistency, and you'll wake up one day and you'll actually have become that person. And my life and the lives of hundreds of clients I've worked with over the years is a testament to that. But it takes effort and consistency, but it all starts with crafting a vision for who you want to become.
Mm-hmm. And we definitely live in a culture of instant gratification. People love their fad diets. They'll do keto. They'll do Whole30. They'll do whatever it takes. There's a drug, I think it's called Ozempic or something. It helps people lose weight. So like people are all about quick fixes. And if it can be done in 1 week, 30 days, whatever, 60-second abs, whatever it is, they just want the results. They don't want the work. But what I have found in life is when you do the work, it's so much more fulfilling. For example, we like to garden in our home. Just the other day, we were doing the garden because it was really nice. It was 85 degrees here in Texas. Now it's cold. So we got the garden beds ready, right? We planted a couple of seeds that will survive the frost and everything. And my son, he's 2. So he was out there with the rake and he was doing what he does, helping in his own right? He was doing the best he could, but he was there, right? And that was family time. And it's so funny because like you can get a cucumber from the grocery store. You can get it from whatever local grocery store, farmer's market, whatever. But when you take a bite of that cucumber or it's the tomato or pepper or it's something different, it's like it's transcendent. It's like, this is my hard work. This is what I did. There's something else in there, the flavor of life in doing that. And it's so funny because we grow a lot. And we give it to our neighbors too. So like the neighbors in front of me and back of me side, everyone's getting some of our produce because we just have too much and we don't freeze or anything. We just give away because we know we're going to do it again. And people typically, they'll text me or they'll call me. They're like, I never had something like that before. It was so fresh. It was so great. And I mean, I do a really good job making sure the soil is good because, I grew up also, growing food in our backyard. And, my great grandmother had instilled that within me or, in me. And I was like, I want to do that for my kids too. Because it's not so much of let's go out and do things that we don't necessarily understand are given to us by others. For example, those groceries you buy, they're created from a company, a farmer, someone, right? And we think that we did it ourselves. I went grocery shopping. I bought the groceries. And so now it's a very singular where they think they're doing everything by themselves, but they're not, right? There's a community of everyone coming in. And yes, we have a trade and commerce where you can use money that you've earned with your time to buy the resources that you need. And then all of a sudden you think you're this lone warrior. You're this, this boss that goes out and fights the world by themselves. But yet, we can look at the, your time in Cuba. the families that are together, right? They have a connection. But yet here in the States, in the Western world, it's like, as you said early on, we have never been more disconnected. And I wanted to ask, how would a person find more connection in their life? Would it be through journaling, meditation, reading books, listening to podcasts? What is your go-to method for finding connection or helping people find connection?
Absolutely. So what I've found is that when it comes to connection, it's one of those things that it requires courage, because a lot of people, they are stuck in a victim mentality that's like, well, when is somebody going to care about me? When is somebody going to check in on me? When is somebody going to call me? When is somebody going to text me, right? When is somebody going to like my posts or whatever it is, right? And so we're looking for this, especially you see it all over on social media, is that people are deriving some semblance or what they think is a form of connection. But in my mind, it's counterfeit. It's counterfeit connection because it's just immediate, instant gratification. And what's funny, the reason I think it's instant gratification is because in a moment they can read one comment that's positive and the next one's negative. They've forgotten all the positivity. If there's any bit of hate, or there's any bit of, someone disagrees with you or whatever it is. And so I think that led to the rise in cancel culture, which didn't help with our connection, is that we used to be a society, and I believe that we can work our way back there. It's going to be hard, but we used to be a society that could respect differences and still love people. And you can see it with the most recent election cycle, the last several election cycles, is that just depending on what side of the aisle you're on, right, people get labeled and they're this type of, and what that does is it destroys the very connection that our souls crave. Instead of recognizing that, yeah, Michael may have a different belief system than me. He may see the world differently. He may have a different set of values. He may have a different understanding of how things work. But if I just label you because you voted for some candidate, or because this is your religion, or because you went to school here, or because of any number of things, we're literally harming ourselves and we're separating ourselves from the very thing that we're craving. And so what I tell people, the most effective way to reintroduce healthy connection into your life is to have the courage to go actually be with human beings. And so that's one of the things we do. And I have an organization called The Ardent Man. It stands for Accountable, Responsible, Disciplined, Empathetic, Noble, and True. And it's a community of men who want to be better husbands, better fathers, better leaders. And one of the things that our guys love is that we try to, on a quarterly basis, have an in-person meetup where we go camping, we get around the fire, we sit, we talk, we're outside, and we're just rubbing shoulders, because it's in that place. I find its proximity. And so for anyone listening, like somebody said this recently, is that America has lost a lot of what I think are called like third places. So you've got home and work, and third places would be, especially for European culture, it's the pub, or it's the cafe, or it's the park, or whatever it is. There's so many societies and subcultures in the United States that, like, they don't have a third place, especially because a lot of our generation has stepped away from what used to be your third place was your church. The third place was where you went. Those are your friends, connections, things like that. A lot of people have just had a lot of opposition and stepped away from that. And so we're more disconnected than ever. But what I tell people is, if you really want to start stretching yourself, have the courage to go to a networking meetup, to go to a conference, to go to an event, to get around other people that share similar passions, similar interests. If you want to start a business, right? Go to a conference about sales and marketing and starting a business. If you are running a business and you're wanting to learn about scale or systems or operations, you need to start connecting with actual human beings. And again, the hard part about it, Michael, is that it takes courage. And a lot of us don't have courage. We're terrified. We're scared of being rejected, and we're scared of not being good enough. And that goes back to the original work we were talking about, is that you've got to do the internal work to define who you want to become. Because if you want to be a leader, if you want to be a speaker, if you want to be an author, if you want to be whatever you want to be, then you need to start surrounding yourself with people that are doing those things and leaning into them. Because I believe the age-old adage that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you're the only people you're spending time with are your family and your grandma and your pastor or your friend, the harsh reality is that you are the average. But if you start really cultivating relationships with other people, there's no limit to the amount of opportunities and doors that will open to you. And again, it takes courage. This podcast took courage from you to be like, are people even going to listen? Like, is this going to help people? You had to be courageous to do it. I had to have courage to put myself out there, say, I want to be on podcasts, right? It's these little things that what's beautiful is we're creating that right now, Michael. You don't know me. I don't know you, but we're getting to know each other. And guess what? We're creating the beginnings of a relationship. So for everyone listening, it's about just having the courage to go connect with people. And the more you can do it flesh and blood in person, do as much of that as you possibly can, because that will cause you to feel differently. It's going to be scary, but it will change how you feel.
I love that idea. It's very different than our screen world, our technology world, our Zoom room, our remote work world. It's getting back to life, getting back to people. And it's so important that we realize that people are going to, be good and bad, of course, right? We find our people, but then I don't want people just to find echo chambers, because I see that happening a lot. They go to Facebook or Twitter and they join a group, right? And they say, okay, this is my group, these are my people. And typically in those groups, it's not everyone, right? But they have one view. They say, this is my view, right? We talked about, candidates for president, right? If you don't like this person, then unfollow me or something like that. I'm sure you probably heard of things like that, right? So people are so stern or strict on their views that they are not flexible in life, right? So they are not willing to try new foods, right? I'm going to eat my McDonald's. I'm going to eat my Burger King. This is the food that I grew up with. This is the food that I like. But if you give them, maybe go to Cuba or something and they have some Cuban food, some pernil or something, they're going to say, whoa, I don't want this. Like, I'm not used to it. And it can be off-putting in the beginning because people have to get used to things or trying new things. And, courage is the right word there. They have to have courage for change or to dive into something new. But yet, courage is one of those things that's very similar to common sense. People treat it as optional. It's like, like I could look both ways or I can sue the person who hits me, depending on how we're viewing life, right? It's something that we have to, look at. And it's not just, men, it's not just women, this is life in its entirety, where, women have a very different battle when they're teenagers, for example. They are maybe looking at makeup and stuff, like to be appealing, to have their friends like them, to be in the peer groups. And then boys are trying to find meaning. And, something you said, when you meet quarterly with your, with your group, I thought about the book. It's Raising a Modern Day Knight. And in the book, it talked about the ascension for a boy into manhood, where the boy, because if you think about our culture, we don't necessarily have a thing that says you are now a woman, right? You are now a man. Yeah, of course, you can have your period, you can have sex, or you can be 18 or 21 or whatever, and we just automatically put you into this realm of you are now an adult. But what I have found that looking at things is it's not that. Most people 25 to 30, they are still kids in a sense, right? They have the mindset of a kid where it's like, okay, I'm going to live my life haphazardly. I'm not going to prioritize. We could think of young men who might get a girl pregnant, for example, and they're absent, right? I can think of many stories of men who are like, I don't want this kid. Like, I don't want this obligation. I don't want this problem. Responsibility is always there for us, where if we were taught responsibility at a younger age, and I'm not even talking about paid chores. I'm not saying if you take out the garbage, you're going to get $5. If you wash the dishes, you're going to get $10, right? It's the obligation to what the family system is. And our family system is broken. And the individuals who grow up where they feel as if they have to do it by themselves have been sometimes the people who have always been doing it themselves. Their mom, their dad, whoever was absent in their life, and they have been making their own meals, and they have been growing up in this system of, okay, I'm doing it, and I am okay. I'm not great, maybe, but I'm okay, right? And so now we have, maybe like a come to faith moment later on in life. Do I want to replicate my childhood again? Millennials are doing a wonderful job. It's like 60 or 70% of millennials are very present parents, where they're like, I'm going to be present with my kids because because they didn't get that growing up. So they're doing a lot of things for their kids, but there's a catch-22 there, because if you're fighting your kids' battles, if you're doing everything for them, you're not giving them struggles and challenges along the way. Now they're going to turn into your 4-hour, work week individuals who don't want to work and who don't want to take responsibility, and who don't know many skills beyond, all right, mom and dad are, paying for my internet, my video games, my Taco Bell runs. And so we have to look at being a parent, or just, being an adult that is maybe interested in family life. What would be the protocol to ensure that we don't replicate our past, to replicate our hurt? Because maybe, you're an adult or someone who has grown up in hardship. And so now you're in a position or in a place where your family might never have those struggles again. And as you said, that, your great grandfather-in-law or grandfather-in-law, he says, I miss being hungry, right? It's the same aspect in a sense. It's like we don't even let our kids be hungry because we're like, I don't want them to have this experience. So it's very interesting. And I just love that idea of, I miss being hungry, right? So how many things are we allowing our children, or the next generation to come, to have missed because we already learned from knowledge or from wisdom? So we're not repeating that. But then again, they're doomed to repeat history if they don't remember it.
It's you make some really great points there, Michael. I think I can't say that there's an exact protocol, but what I can say is that for every one of us, for parents in particular, and even if you're not a parent, if you ever want to become a parent, I think that this is hopefully useful for you to consider. I would not consider myself a parenting expert, but having 4 kids, I mean, I've learned a few things,
Mm-hmm.
and what I have realized is that your relationship with yourself and your relationship with your spouse are probably the 2 most important factors that will contribute to their overall well-being. And what I mean by that is that you mentioned we've got a lot of people that, there's no coming of age, right? And it's not just 25, 30-year-olds. I've had conversations with 55, 60-year-olds who are grown men who feel like they're a boy trapped in a man's body, that they never had someone come alongside and affirm them in their masculinity. And same thing with women. They never had an older woman come and affirm them in their femininity and who they are. And that's a big part of, why the ardent man that's why our virtues are in the name. So ardent, ARDENT, that's why I believe that for someone to identify for themselves whether or not they're operating as a healthy whole man is, are you accountable? Are you responsible? Are you disciplined? Are you empathetic? Are you noble? And are you true? And when you look at those virtues and you kind of overlay them on your life, and you start to ask this question of, okay, how do I not repeat the sins of my father? And how do I be different or better? We have to be careful that we don't swing to one end of the spectrum. And because that's what often happens in generations, is that you have a very hard generation that works hard, that is always gone, maybe absent, and so the kid grows up and is like, oh, I just want to be with my kids. I just want to be with my family. But what they don't realize is that those kids are going to swing back to the other end of the spectrum, right? Is that it can be a pendulum. And so what I usually encourage people to consider is, first and foremost, working on yourself more than anything else. Is, are you happy with the person you see in the mirror? Are you proud of yourself? Are you confident in yourself? Do you love yourself? Are you kind to yourself? Are you empathetic towards your past? Have you forgiven, or are you stuck in shame and guilt and regret? Or are you living paralyzed about the future in anxiety and fear and stress? Or are you able to just be you with nothing to prove and nothing to hide? Can you bring yourself to that place in your relationship with yourself? And then secondary to that is your relationship with your spouse. I firmly believe that the health of a child is determined by the relationship that they see modeled between a husband and a wife. And it is something that is challenging in culture today. I know there's a lot of different people that have different philosophies on family units and things like that. What I would encourage people to do is, if you have questions on it, just go look at the data. Go look at the statistics of what having a stable father and mother in a home, what that does statistically to a child as far as their ability to contribute to society, whether or not they end up in jail or on drugs or any of these other things. Like, the statistics don't lie. And I don't say that to make anyone feel guilty or ashamed if you've gone through. I know a lot of people have gone through divorce. A lot of people are in tenuous situations, and a lot of people don't share my values, and even that may be listening today. But what I would say is that when it comes to the child, don't idolize the child or make them into a mini God in your life. If I see that's where many, many relationships fail, is that the parents fall out of love with each other and their entire world revolves around this child or their children. And they stop maintaining a friendship and a relationship with each other. And they wake up 15, 20 years later, and the kids graduate and go on with life. And they're looking at this person that they don't even know anymore, because their entire world has revolved around this child or these children. And I see that as a huge problem in our current society, Michael, is that you have to, I believe, the best way to love and serve our kids, again, really, it's three things. One, your relationship with yourself. Two is your relationship with your spouse. And three is, are you actively every day leaning into the potential that is on your life? Are you a role model for your kids? Or are they looking at you being like, well, dad just sits around and does nothing all the time. I mean, he comes home and he just gets on his phone or this, that, and the other. Because our kids learn more by observation and what they see than what we teach them. We can preach and teach at them all day long, but it's going to be our lifestyle and our choices. One of my favorite things, Michael, is when my kids ask me if I've gone to the gym. It's just something that is like, Daddy, did you get back from the gym? And whether I've gone on out for a sales call or whatever it is, they always think that I'm going to the gym, right? To me, that is something that is helping them learn by observation. Our dad prioritizes his health. And guess what? My kids now, they are the ones that are like, hey, can I work out? When can I be old enough to go to the gym with you? Can we turn on a YouTube and do exercise in the living room? Can I, all these things? And that's a simple example that I don't think any of us will ever get perfect. But the question is when you look at your life, you look at who you are, you look at your choices in your health, in your relationships, and in your career and finances, are you making choices that you want your children to replicate? Because if you're not, they are going to replicate them no matter what you say to them, because they're going to model the behavior that they see. And so, again, those three things: your relationship with yourself, relationship with your spouse, and then focusing on who you want to become and modeling that. And if there are single parents listening, if you don't have that dynamic of the relationship with a spouse, I would encourage you, please don't make your child your entire world. That's not healthy or good for them. That's your job, my job. I believe this firmly, Michael. Our job is to help create an environment that replicates to some degree what the real world is going to look like when they leave. And so if we've not done a good job of helping them navigate pain and disappointment and frustration and delaying gratification and them not getting what they want the moment that they want it, then they're going to struggle as adults. But if we can create that environment, now age appropriate, right? You don't treat a 2-year-old the same as a 14-year-old, right? But to create that environment to help them learn the tough lessons, then you're setting them up for failure. And I don't want that for any parent. I don't think any parent wants that for their child. You just have to be careful not to coddle them. Be present, absolutely, but let them figure it out. Don't insert yourself in situations all the time. Let them struggle, but let them know that you're there and you're there to help and you love them. And I think that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think you said it wonderfully there. It's so important. I love the aspect of 15 years down the road when the kids are gone and everything, and you're left with this person, you don't even know who they are. And even if we just take away the aspect of a family or a wife, sometimes people spend 15 years of their life and they're going down this path and they look in the mirror and they don't even recognize themselves. So it's either side, whether you're doing this as like just a person kind of going through the 9 to 5, business, entrepreneur, whatever it be, family, man or woman, and you're not doing that check in with yourself and looking at what's happening. Communication is so important, not just with others, but yourself, where you have to say, you know what's going on? Like, let me do some work. And I just love working with coaches, with individuals, with mentors, with guides, because they help you see your blind spots. They help you look at the areas where you might have, threw in a corner or under a rug, whatever it be. And it could happen almost passively or subconsciously where you don't even know you're doing it. But when you have someone looking at the areas where you're trying to figure out like what's going on behind those doors and behind, those, dark corners, we just need someone often to shed some light in those areas. So we can say, okay, let's get to work. And the work is not by yourself, which is the wonderful thing, because many people, they think like, oh, I have to do this by myself. But when you have someone supporting you, cheering for you, guiding you along the way, you stop so many, pitfalls from happening that other people would have had to learn from trial and error. So I just love the aspect of, having, a coach or someone in your life. And, I always say I'm not everyone's cup of tea. And one of the reasons why I started coaching in session was because I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I know there's so many wonderful coaches out there in the world who help individuals be more than what they are right now, or help them aspire or attain the life that they are dreaming of or vying for. And it's so important that you find a person that is going to help you on that journey. And here in coaching session, we have so many different flavors of coaches from all around the world, of course, too. So you get to figure out, like, hey, is this person, someone that resonates with me or will resonate with me? And, just from, speaking with David today, I mean, like, he's a man of great knowledge and immense wisdom. And both of those are key components to a wonderful coach and mentor. So I would definitely encourage anyone to reach out to David if they're looking for, any insight in their future or any adjustments to the trajectory that they're currently moving in, whether it be their single life or family life. Is so important that we can not only separate them, but connect them too, because it is important. So as we begin to wrap up, David, I would love to get some final words from you, and then for you to also please tell the audience where they can find you and reach out to you.
Absolutely. So you said something earlier, Michael, that I think is critically important, is that you talked about gardening, right? And planting seeds. And we mentioned that word cultivation, is that this process of growth it's not something that you can manufacture. It's an organic process. It requires patience. It requires time. It requires consistency. It requires, like you said, the best investments I have ever made in myself, or in paying people to help me go faster and paying people to help me get out of my own way. When you can do that. Now, there were times where I couldn't, and I had to figure it out on my own. And that's where you have to understand that this process of cultivation, the thing that I wanted to kind of leave everyone with is that you may find that the seeds of your life have been scattered all over the place. And maybe you've been planted in a place where it's super rocky and you don't get a lot of sunlight, and you're not surrounded by optimistic, hopeful people. And maybe you're in a desert, or it's dry ground, and you're just struggling to make it every single day. What I want to encourage everyone with is that a lot of times what's needed for a plant to thrive is that you don't blame the plant because of the environment. You don't say, well, you suck because you're not growing, when you're not getting the nutrients and you're not getting the sunlight and you don't have access to the things that you need. You wouldn't blame the plant for that. What you would do is you would transplant that plant and move it somewhere that is the right environment. You mentioned soil, right? Is that we have to assess as individuals, what are we rooted and planted in? Are we surrounded by people that are inspiring us, encouraging us, challenging us? Or do we have people in our corner that have the courage to ask us uncomfortable questions? Because I'm sure you mentioned your grandma, Michael, that one of the people that we respect the most oftentimes are our grandmas. Why? Because she would tell us what we needed to hear, not what we wanted to hear, what we needed to hear. And it might have had a little slap attached to it or whatever. But grandma loved you, right? She loved us so much. And those are the people that we respect the most, are the ones that have the courage to ask us challenging questions. And so if you're looking at yourself and you're assessing it, like I'm not growing, check your environment. You may need to transplant yourself into a new environment and to get rooted into new soil and surrounded by the right type of elements in order for you to grow and thrive and become who you were created to be. But that means you're going to have to dig yourself up and have some courage. You're going to have to pick yourself up and transition. And so, Michael, thank you so much for sharing time. Yeah, for anyone that's interested in connecting, you can check out my website. You can Google me and find all my information, all the podcasts I've been on, different resources and things like that. And I primarily work with those that are small business owners or in the entrepreneurial space. I do a combination of a lot of the personal side as well as the business development. And so if anyone's in that season and they're looking for support or solutions, feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect.
Then I'll make it easy for everyone. Website will be down below. Any socials you have, definitely go toss them down there too. That's what I like to do, because I know people, they have their favorites. They like their Instagrams, they like their Facebooks, even though I don't like them. I understand there are people who feel comfortable on certain platforms more than others. And sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone. Sometimes we have to have the courage to say, you know what, let me try something different. Let me try something new. And I know when I first started, podcasting, I use it as the example. But episode 1 and 2 was like, whoa, like, what are people going to think? Or, all these thoughts were coming in my head, right? But I said, you know what? Those thoughts are not beneficial to me. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do regardless, right? And now it's almost like clockwork. It's like I don't even feel a bit of nerve when it comes to doing the recording typically, because I've done it so much. So we practice, we make progress, right? And we work our way to that perfection, but it's always progress still. So I encourage people to connect, to reach out, to say, let me have a bit of courage today to ask the questions that might be ruminating in my mind or that might be unanswered and I'm looking for some help. It's a phone call. It's an email. It's a text message maybe, right? And from there, you can start to look at and deliberate finally and say, okay, maybe you're not ready for it, right? Okay, sure, right? We take some time. But, I always say there is no perfect time for life. You have to kind of go off. And they say when you're at the moment of fear or at the edge of fear, and it feels like you can't move, that is the time you move. That is the time you jump. And so I encourage people to reach out to David. Wonderful conversation today. He's going to be able to not only help you on the personal side, but on the business side too. It's so important that we have someone who's able to help us in all aspects of our growth. So David, thank you so much for coming on, spending some time and talking about your work today.
Thank you, Michael. It was an honor, my man.